Hi, this is Colby from the ColbyCast, and you're listening to Star Wars Reactions. Elegant discussion for a more civilized age. Greg, come to think of it, I've been on the podcast, but this is the first time I've been in the studio.
Yeah, nice digs.
Wait, is that who I think it is?
Hey, Chop, you don't mind if Colby and I check out the studio, right? It's all right. We won't break anything. I promise. Hey, Colby, check this out.
Whoa!
I think we can do a show for Aaron and David while they prepare for the storm.
That's a great idea. Looks like everything is set up, ready to record. He doesn't sound very thrilled.
It's fine. What's the worst that could happen?
There's been an awakening. Have you felt it?
In 1977, George Lucas formed a legacy.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
Inspired by mythology, his saga has become a passion for many.
Feel the Force around you.
His legend has become our story.
It's true. All of it.
One of resistance,
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
rebellion,
Rebellion is built on hope.
and redemption.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
This is Star Wars Reactions.
Remember, the Force will be with you. Always.
And Colby, so we go ahead and get started. This is kind of weird. It's like neither of us are on our own podcast tonight. You know, we're sort of in a new space. It's kind of like it's nice in here. I thought it's got everything we need right here. We got some microphones. We got our computer that's ready to record. It's just missing the two most important people of this podcast, but they got more stuff to worry about this week because of what will be Hurricane Milton, and it looks like it's going to be a doozy. But I just wanted to thank you, Colby, for giving me a hand, because I thought, hey, when we're so far away, I mean, the least we can do, other than thoughts and prayers and all that, was like, hey, why don't we cut a show for you, and you don't have to worry about that, and then that way you guys can, once the power and everything comes back on, one less thing you have to worry about, because as well as I do, Colby, momentum is a big thing in what we do. And you start to kind of miss weeks, and I'm guilty of it as anybody else. It just becomes easier and easier to find a reason why not to record.
Well, I'm very happy to be here to help out keeping that momentum going. And I have to say that it is very roomy in here. And David and Aaron have really hooked us up. I had a nice, cool, brisk iced tea waiting for me in the studio. Now I'm here. I feel like I'm at home. And of course, all of our best wishes go out to both David and Aaron, as well as everyone else that's being affected by this very difficult week. Gosh, it's almost like a month, really, if we're taking in other things into consideration. So we do wish the best for everybody involved, and I am so thrilled to be here and help out. And I'm so glad that you asked me, Greg, to be here. So.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I remember, I lived in the Pacific, and, you would go through storm season, and usually it was about, the second half of the year. And, I remember getting, even though our island, Saipan was small, it was a 12-mile long island. You'd have these storms that were coming, and you would follow, NOAA's website, right? We would also follow sites by the Joint Typhoon, warning system. And one of my jobs, actually, because I worked for a cable company, and we had a channel that we used to just put up weather maps. And so literally I would pull down, I'd, copy, save the latest weather maps, which, a lot of times on island is pretty consistent. But when you had a storm coming, you would put them up, and, we just had something. I would just go into there was a computer that was running this kind of like a slideshow, and I would load up four or five images. But when a storm came, we would start pulling down like those, like you see now. If you're going to NOAA and you look at those those projected paths, we would put those up as, everybody else was getting, a lot of information from the government as far as like, hey, we're tracking this. And of course the news, the news that we produced would also talk about it. But, when it was getting close, now it's probably about the same here as when the winds get up to about 60 mile per hour, the CUC, the Commonwealth Utility Corporation power company, would turn off the power. And so we would kind of like go with what we can until the power went out. And, like anybody else, and I'll get that in a second. As we knew a storm was approaching, we would be sent home. And back then there was this great piece of software called PC Anywhere that allowed me to log into the computer at the head end, and I would continue to upload images until the power was cut. But then I could see, so I'd call up students like, hey, can you put channel 3 on this? And so I'd kind of I called it the Windows channel, because I'd watch what I was doing. And of course, you've got a 56K modem, and so you're just like chunk, chunk, chunk. So I'd get all these images, and you'd log in, and it was this big affair. I mean, this is, mid to late 90s. But I remember my modem taking a hit on my PC. We had a power spike, and my modem got zapped, and so I had to downgrade to like a 33.3 modem, and so I almost felt like I was going to take this modem PC card, and mount it to like a little plaque on the wall, and says, the Typhoon, I forget what the storm was, honorary modem that gave its life trying to update this weather channel until it just finally died. But you
were full on MacGyvering this entire situation.
Oh my
You had
goodness.
the bubble gum and the popsicle sticks out, no doubt.
Well, and just what they were running into, this week, where you'd have to make sure the car is full of gas. You got once the power goes out, and it's going to go out for a few days or whatever, you started trying to like get rid of some of the perishables, or you start like stocking up on, for us it was Spam and a little bit of Sterno, right? Because you're trying to cook something over. Make sure your candles and your batteries. We used to play what we call Blackout Battleship, where you get it's something to kind of keep you, because they boarded up the windows, right? You get the plywood and you'd board up the windows. And I was talking to Aaron that I think one year we had to go to a friend's house, and we were cutting down. They had shorter coconut trees, and you have to cut the coconuts off, because when a storm is coming through, those become like projectiles at warp 5, and so anything that's not tied down, you gotta I'm sure it's the same thing with you, like when you've had, you guys have events, but like with earthquakes, but they're not really planned, and so I would say, just looking behind you, you even have to like your collectibles and things like that, you probably have to secure some, or make sure nothing's just hanging up there just loose. That's, that'd be ready to come down either on the ground or on you.
We call it earthquake proofing. And before I get into that, I have to admit, I have never considered projectile coconuts in any type of weather situation, because we do get high winds here. They call them Santa Ana winds. They also call them devil winds, because it usually occurs when it's really hot. And they come out, they call them onshore. It's an onshore flow rather than an offshore flow. I am in Southern California, so relatively close to the ocean. So when, not necessarily where I live, but you do have that ocean, like that onshore flow there, I should say, I always get confused whether it's on or off, but the wind that comes from the ocean onto land is cool. It's nice, helps everything become very temperate. But when it switches and it goes from the east to the west, and it's going towards, coming out of the deserts that are east of the Los Angeles area, they just rip through the basin, including where I'm at, the San Fernando Valley, and it is just miserable. And they can get pretty destructive, not talking hurricane force, of course, but they do get up there where you're wondering, like, I mean, it uproots trees, and it causes, it can cause some damage. Earthquakes, though, of course, is a whole other category. And you're right. People that live here, the stuff that I have behind me is all Funko Pops or action figures, so plastic, right? So
Right.
Nothing's going to break. So I don't necessarily have to worry too much about securing those. But if you have, a TV anchored to your wall, or you have pictures of any kind, they literally will sell like hanging kits that are earthquake proofed. Or if you have valuables that will break sort of strewn about your house, like ceramic type of things or anything, they literally do sell like a gummy type of, it's almost like a Play-Doh kind of material
Oh,
that
wow.
you can put on the bottoms of them, and it will help them from not being shaken off of a shelf. Now, if the earthquake is too strong, of course, the shelf is probably coming down, so it doesn't matter what you do to it. But yeah, there is some people are better at it than others. I think we are pretty good at making sure that nothing is hanging over beds, for example. I'll tell a quick story. When I was a kid, the 1994 Northridge earthquake was very devastating, and I was a late teenager, like 18, something like that. And for the years leading up to that, it seemed like we were getting pretty substantial earthquakes on a regular basis, to the point where I was in the habit of just sort of like waiting them out in bed. If I was asleep and it was overnight, I would just sort of like, okay, here's another one. You just wait until it's over. But not 1994. That one kept going, and it kept getting stronger, to the point where, yeah, I jumped up and ran out. It was 4:30 in the morning, so it's pitch dark outside, and you sort of find cover under a door frame is what they recommend. So for various reasons, but later on, when the sun came up, because we had no power after that, of course, but the sun came up and the light was finally in my room. I had, various trophies from athletic events in my life with those little marble bases,
sharp ones
and
too.
one of them actually, my parents made a trophy for me of my first goal, when I scored my first goal as a hockey player. And that one was a pretty sizable, because it had the trophy on one side and the hockey puck that I actually used to score on the other side. So this one was hefty. And these things were literally down right where I laid my head on the pillows after that earthquake in 94. So yeah, I'm very glad I got up when I did. I wouldn't have died, I don't think, but I certainly would have had some cuts and bruises and things I didn't want to have to deal with. So that was definitely not earthquake proofed in that scenario.
See, that it was just saving your face for junior hockey and all the punishment you're going to take there.
was never good enough for that. Never got that far, but yeah, a whole other story there.
Well, and even on collectibles, right? And I think that's, the beauty of things like the plastic bins, because, a lot of people will turn their basements, into, man caves or collector caves and things like that. And, it wouldn't take, and I think even our friend Tom Gross has kind of gone through that, where there was some flooding and, especially in a basement or something like that. So kind of behooves you if, especially if I was going to live in an area where it was prone to more, like flooding and things like that, I think I would probably have them, if I was going to categorize it, I just have it in bins. And in that way, even if it flooded somewhat, then either I could move them or move them out or move them up or something like that. But because what does floodwaters love most? Like cardboard and paper, plastic. You can clean
absolutely
off old Luke Skywalker, but those Topps cards and whatnot, not very good. Now it's something I haven't really thought about it, but it's been a little while since I've kind of built an emergency kit. Do you guys have anything like that?
We do. We actually have a backpack we were able to buy. I think we bought it at some kind of an event that I can't remember what it was, but there was some first responders there, and they were selling sort of like a pre-made backpack, which was bright orange, which is very good because it has everything you need. And we've sort of, you have to be good about swapping out the potential perishable items and something like that, even if it's just water, right? So you got to sort of keep on it. And my wife is very good at this. I'm not going to try to say that I am, but my wife is very good at it. So we have that. And then but it's not waterproof, and it's also not fireproof. So that's something else you need to consider, right? In an emergency situation, if you have things that you need and it's underwater or it's burnt, they're not going to help you too much. So we do have another one that's in a sort of more of a sturdy type of durable case. And as you were talking, you got me thinking. I was flashing back to the last time I had the opportunity to talk with Aaron on the podcast, and I talked about earthquakes on that episode too. So here I am again. I must be the Star Wars Reactions earthquake guy, because that episode we were talking about, the Bad Batch episode where they reached Pabu. And of course, there's a big earthquake in that episode.
That's right.
And I started rambling on about earthquakes. And here I am back again talking about earthquakes. So, hey, we don't talk about them on the ColbyCast, but if you have any questions, you know where to reach me. Instagram, Threads, and X. I'll answer all your earthquake questions.
Yeah, and then speaking of fires, we just had our building just had a fire drill. Like each, as an office manager, I've got to go to the annual tenant meeting where they bring the guy from the local fire department out, and he kind of gives the kind of the 411, as it were. And even though I've heard this a few times, you kind of forget about things like, the reason why those doors are, like the fire exit doors are closed is because, they try to keep that stairwell, clear of smoke. And if someone props open the door to try to help, like you just letting the smoke in, it's just going to get sucked in. And and sure enough, a couple days later, we have the fire drill. And of course, I've got to get my, it's not quite Matt the radar technician orange vest. I save that for special occasions, but it's an orange vest nonetheless. It's a nice one. When I looked around, I'm like comparing orange vests going, no, this works. I've got the reflective, the tape on it and all that kind of stuff. It's good. It's good gear. But yeah, we had to go down. We had to walk down. Walking down, that was the easy part because it's 12 floors. You walk down, and what they also do is they don't hit the alarm at all floors at once. They'll do it in staggered, because what happens is that if you if you hit all the places at once, I think what they're supposed to do is first you go to like the floor and then like a floor above and floor below. Get those folks out first, because then you don't want them crashing into everybody else going down, which as we were working our way down and they were kind of doing the other alarms, the doors would you'd see the doors open faster. You're like, okay, we got to get down because otherwise you're going to get piled up with the people. And then of course there's folks who need help and they've got to stay in the stairwell so that, and you get down and go to, like your security guys and go, hey, we're clear. And they say, do you have anybody who needs assistance? You yes or no, and things like that. And then you're outside. The only problem is after a fire drill, right, everybody's got to go back up. And we're on the top floor. And so we can either wait 20 to 30 minutes, which in hindsight probably was the better deal, or we can go, you know what, we're just going to walk up 12 flights of stairs. We're fine. I'm sitting there for the next half hour, breathe like this going, all right, I'm out of shape. And, it's like I'm popping halls because it feels like, I remember like the first time I ever played broom ball on the ice, and you were out there for like 2 minutes and all of a sudden you don't realize, I don't know what, you're the one that talked about, it's like, is it something about the cold that when you're breathing in that air, all of a sudden you feel like your lungs are on fire or something? But that's how my lungs felt when I got back, because I'm just gasping for air, and I'm like, okay. I wasn't like falling over, but I was like definitely like, all right, give me some halls.
There's you're describing me on the ice every Saturday morning in hockey practice. So yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. And yeah, I think it hits everybody differently. I don't have the same experience in my lungs, but inevitably, if I'm in an ice rink, and we were just in an ice rink for about 6 hours this past weekend, and it was 95 degrees outside, and it wasn't even that cold in the ice rink. But boy, when you walk in there, the nose just starts running. I don't mean to be gross, but it just starts, and it's, you just can't stop it. And I'm like, why does this happen? I've been around hockey and in my in ice rinks for 35 plus years. Why is this still happening? I guess there's nothing I can do about it.
It's like that reminds me like the first time I had to I learned that you're sitting there and you're breathing, and I'm in goal and I'm just fogging up, and I think the way that you had to combat, now I think there's probably a coating you can put, but they're like, yeah, get some shampoo or something, and you would coat the inside of those plastic helmet, like the visor part, to keep it from fogging up. And that was like my routine, because as soon as I'd bring like a little bottle of shampoo, and as soon as I got my goalie mask, or like, the plastic mask, I'd excuse myself, go into the bathroom, I'd sit there and just be like putting that stuff on that keep it from.
Well, first of all, they call them fish bowls now. Anybody that has a plastic visor, they call them fish bowls. And secondly, this is breaking news for me. I had no idea that you were a goaltender. This is Brent. My mind is blown. You are almost as rare as a Sasquatch. Like, how did this happen?
So here's the thing. Okay, so in college, playing broom ball, once you realize, I think I played it once or twice and realized that, if you're out there running around on the ice, I'm like, I don't like what it's doing to my lungs. I'm like, so it's like, you're just sitting there, you just feel like it. So I'm like, you know what? I'm a goalie. I'll just stay in one place. However, the one thing you find in colleges are, Greeks, right? Your fraternity types. They are super good at organized sport. Anything that involved, like, they are just top notch. And so all of a sudden, there's just a collection of us kids, or, like motley crew. I think I was with the radio station, so of course we're not athletes anyway. But there were all these guys, and they're all about the same height. They're all like 6-ish, and they're just like, and they decided, of course, that the easiest way to score a goal in broomball is just maul over me. It's like, they could try to like tuck it and all that, or if they just go through me. Well, that's the quickest way. It's the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line through the goalie. And so, yeah, I ended up the first time I think I hit the ice with my elbows. I realized the next thing I did was go down to the sports shop and I bought goalie elbow pads, as well as knee pads. And so by the end of the whole thing, I was together. But yeah. And then I learned that
and you continue to do this. You
no. This is just the pain of that. I remember it to this day. But the only thing that I did, and you've seen broomball, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? So sure, it's like the stick is maybe about 4 feet, and then I also did, instead of and then it's like the little broom. It's maybe 5-6 inches. So instead of holding it with the broom on the ice, I just held it by the like where the broom part meets the handle, and I could have more freedom of movement. I could get to a ball faster. And so, and so that way, and then also be like a good goalie, right? As you see him start to come down the ice, you beat your stick against the ice. It's like you kind of like you're getting in ready, and you're like slamming it on there, and then you go anyway. So this is many, many years ago, but
it's a fascinating lesson in broomball. I have played it, but I can't say that I lived it. Not like you've lived it, because this is fascinating.
The scars are real. At any rate, this is what you're getting on Star Wars Storm Reactions. That's what the title of this is. But I think the other thing that to tie it back, because I think there's that when a storm is coming or something like that, there's a sort of that feeling of dread, or you just feel something happening, and then there's this once it kind of happens and everything kind of starts calming down, then there is sort of this lull of time where it's like, all right, the time between when it's over to the time when things are more or less, getting back to, I wouldn't say normal, but whatever it is it's going to be, there is just sort of like, I think time kind of stands still. And so I think when I was thinking about what we might, talk about, and I didn't think we'd talk about broomball or hockey or anything like that, but I do think a lot of it's about, like this week, today even, when people are connecting, right? Yep. Everybody's kind of like checking up on, because now in this hobby, we have come to know each other, right? You're on the West Coast, I'm in the Midwest, but we know people in Florida. We know Mary and Chaz and Anthony King from Force Coast Conversations, and David and Aaron, and I know some Aaron, Daniel Gavar, who does art for Star Wars Card Trader, and otherwise, he's down there in that area. Daniel from, I was going to say, let me quickly go over there. I was kind of quickly. Daniel Riverone, who I've had on the podcast before, he was down there in like more in that Naples area. There's Robert Armenez, who's also in more southern in Florida. But, we know people who are in these areas that, get hit and things like that. And I think it just, it kind of expands, I think, your world a bit, as far as, wow, oh yeah, there's that person I know, or I do this stuff with. And, sometimes you just feel so helpless that you go, you know what, you can tune it out, or you can go, you can kind of go, all right, and of course, there are the things like the American Red Cross is usually the first default thing usually people think of, although, a lot of these charities, there's a lot of things that they're doing, and, very often you feel like, does my direct support go here, there, and all that. But, if you have, I'm quite sure we're going to be seeing ads from, and like I said, or, if you have the means and things like that, it's probably a good idea to, if you can, just because, we've seen what happened to, Asheville and all that, not to bring the podcast to a complete, like, whoa, but still, in this community that we, are a part of, we're all affected by it one way or the other.
Well, I'm so glad that you brought up the community aspect of it, and you took the words right out of my mouth, actually, when you said the words community and connections, because that's what makes a community, right? The connections. Mm-hmm. And I just, since I started even listening to podcasts. The first few podcasts I listened to, I was an audience member. I listened. There was really no connections. Of course, there's the Twitter aspect of things or whatnot. But around 2018, 2017, 2018, I can't remember exactly when, I feel like, and I know that Mary Purdue has done a great job of talking about this aspect of it. I started listening to Dan on Coffee with Kenobi, and that was really the first time that I felt like I had entered a community. Up to that point, I had dabbled with podcasts here and there and just listened. But I reached out to Dan. I sent him an email, and I just appreciated him. I said, hey, he's talking about sending an email. He's putting that in the show for a reason. So I wasn't, made me a little nervous, like, yeah, I don't know why it made me nervous. I was just a little nervous, like reaching out, like, is this silly? Like, what's going on? But lo and behold, the man reached back out to me. We responded to the email. And of course, we had begun following each other on Twitter by that time, because he does a great job, like you do as well, of following back people that follow you and actually engaging in that kind of thing. But the email sort of changed everything, and it sort of lit something in me. And I started getting that idea of, I'm really enjoying being a part of this community, not just podcast community, but Star Wars community. And then it's grown and grown and grown. And here I am. I have my own podcast now. I've involved my two grown-up sons, and they're a part of that community. You and I have become friends through this community, and so many other people that you just referenced in Florida who are being affected by this. And, it just makes me think about the importance of those connections, especially, it's not only when something is going wrong, but sometimes more importantly, when things are going right. Right. Because what is it, that old saying, you find out who your friends are, not when things go wrong, but when things are going right. The people that constantly check back in on you. Hey, how you doing? And I have to tell you, you do a magnificent job of that, Greg. You are out there constantly promoting people's work and people's hard work. I remember going into sort of the weeks going into celebration in 2022 for Anaheim, when I was super pumped because all of my Twitter friends, podcast friends, you name it, are coming to my neck of the woods, and I get to actually see people in the flesh rather than on a computer screen. And you started a Twitter chat with various people. And that Twitter chat has now morphed into a text thread with a group of people. And we're just constantly saying the most ridiculous stuff to each other. But that is what friendship is about, just remaining connected. And I'm so glad that I'm able to be a part of helping Aaron and David. And again, like I said, I'm hoping everything is going great for everybody in the aftermath, and that things will go as smoothly as possible. But really, the community aspect of what we're doing right now is so rewarding and so enriching that if you're out there and you're listening, and maybe you don't feel like the part of that community, or maybe you've been a little nervous like I was to reach out, do it, make that connection. Because I have to tell you now, sitting here 4, 5, 6 years later, my life has been so enriched by that. There's not one negative thing that I could share. Not one thing. It's been nothing but gravy. And, it makes me think back to my grandmother, who was an avid pen pal. She would get lists in the mail of people that wanted to be a pen pal, and she would start writing to people. And she would send stickers. She used to, remember those old things. I don't even know if it's a thing anymore, but stickers. She would send sheets of stickers to people. She loved stickers. And she created, really, in some cases, lifelong relationships by writing to people and then corresponding. And I sort of look at podcasting and social media has that same ability. It's almost a modern version of that, where we live nowhere near each other, but we have this great friendship that has developed over the last few years, and my life's better for it. And, it just speaks to that power of community and connection.
Well, it's interesting. In talking about celebration, going up there and seeing like the patch collectors, the patch and pin collectors, right? You got folks out there that there's the official pins you can buy and you can swap. But there's the ones like, I even remember in Celebration Chicago, I think I had a bunch of my own pins, and the interaction was simply, oh, hey, you're doing the pin swap, right? All right. And it just was on our way. I mean, that was all it was, but I was like, hey, that's cool. But you go up to like with the rooms where they would do these patches, and people that go all out on those patches that if you try to collect and swap will make a whole pattern. And you realize in this community there's these whole pockets. I would almost consider the kind of the podcasters to kind of be in one group, or a group that, and it's all a Venn diagram. We all kind of bleed over, and like because when you go to Celebration, you've got your interests, and that's why no one's going to Celebration and going as this group. It's like you'll go there and like, all right, break. It's like huddle, break, boom, and then everybody's going, hey, I did this or I did that. But it's like you find all these different groups, but it's these connections. And then I was talking recently with this artist in Paris, Stefan Leonardi, and he was doing these cards that he'll be he's been going to Celebrations and doing these cards specifically for, and even he was like, all right, first day I was like, I was going to do a card for every day, and I was like, no, just it's not going to work. I'm going to give him away as packs, and so, but like next year for Japan, people are already, and you're starting to see it on Instagram where people are already kind of doing their Celebration swag. And those are the things. And it kind of made me think of like, I've got a box that I think you come home and there's just this box of swag, and it's almost like a time capsule. And I was thinking like, man, on the one hand, like you get it home and sometimes you have to, all right, I've got bags. If like I got my bags, I've got my patch bag here. I've got my sticker bag here. And I do a good job trying to use the stickers. You give me stickers, I'll use my stickers. But it's sort of like there's all these little odds and ends, or like, Brendan Weinerty, I think, did markers, or no, he did highlighters at Anaheim, and he would put them did them on the chairs. It was nuts. But like, Ross did the for the album Cockpit podcast, right? He did the earplugs. I mean, it's just, like, well, that's not going to go on an album, but I'm like, what is it? So it's like, it's my bag. I just keep it in my bag. It's so cool. But I'm like, yeah, it's like you're opening up these swag boxes and you're like, man, this is like a little capsule of like, you should almost like date it like they do. And it's like a cornerstone, but it is kind of like a cornerstone of your fandom, because you go through and you see these different things. And now, when anybody talks of like a celebration, now it's just like this, it's almost like those little badge of honor things, or like, I remember, and cause it's like those stories, and each year now it goes back. I think it makes Anaheim now even more special in 2022 because of so many. Not everybody gets out there. It's right. Like you don't have to break the bank to get out there, but I'm like, you get out there or you get to one of these things, and it's like every year you do your local con, it's like your range, you'll see the same people. And I was thinking today even that there was this guy who does this cosplay, and he does all these different characters, and I'm like, I kind of know. I mean, I know him just because I know your feed. And I've seen him a couple times, and it's the only thing is like, hey, you're so and so, and then you'll call them by their Instagram name, because I don't know what your name is, but hey, you're I forget, old school cosplay or something like that, and you're just like, and then it's sort of like, there are years where it's like, hey, cool, and then next time I'm like, all right, I gotta talk to this guy, because I'm like, after the second or third time you start to see this now, because C2E2 will be coming up again. I'm like, I'm sure I'm gonna see him again because I know he lives in the area, but you're like, one of these days I've got to I'm going to make the connection a little more. Cause then like, it's one of those, like, you'll like, yeah, I know who you are. Yeah, I know who you are. And that's about it, as opposed to like, like you get the orbits, right? The core people. And then these people that you'll, oh yeah, you're on that one, or I see you on there, or yeah, I'm following anyway. But that's just what makes it fun.
It sure does. It is. And you mentioned the pins. I still have all of my Celebration 2022 or the Anaheim pins. I put them up. I was fortunate enough to have worked from home for a couple of years, of course, because of the pandemic. It's now been a little over, more than a little over a year that I've gone back to my office, but I knew the very first thing that I had ready to go with me were those things that I got from Celebration. One of the pins, of course, your pin is there. So many pins, but one pin that stood out, and it's not just about collecting things, Greg. That's the thing, is like these. You're talking about connections. These pins, or these cards, or these stickers, or these patches, or whatever it may be that you put your time and effort and talent into, to give to people. I think of Frank and Amy, and they paint the rocks and they leave them places. I have 3, Star Wars rocks on Instagram. Follow them. It's amazing. The stuff that they do. Yep. You've got yours here. As soon as I have a chance, I'll turn around and grab mine. I have, I think 3. They're,
if you turn Frank
some of my
upside down,
favorite
he like
things.
he'll shake
it
out all
just
the
comes out of his
rocks.
pockets. my point is this: is that I wanted to bring up one specific one that because there's memories attached, and those memories are attached to people, and those people are valuable, and those people are meaningful to you. It was the last day of celebration, and things were settling down. All the panels had finished. The show floor was still going, but people were starting to trail out. People were taking a few minutes before they had to leave for the airports and whatnot, and to catch their flights and this and that. And I walked out in sort of the little area that's outside the main entrance, and Ross was there and Dan was there, and I had just gone with Caleb to go get a bunch of posters, because at that point no one was in line getting posters. It was down the basement, and they're handing posters out and telling people, take 2, take 3. We got to get rid of these. Go get them. So I had these Andor posters in my hand, and had three or four of them, I think. And this family, husband and wife and their young child, were walking near us, and one of them, I believe it was the mom, came up to me and said, "You have an Andor poster? Would you like to trade something for that?" And I said, "No, I have a few of them. Here, just take it." And her eyes got the pancake size, and the husband came over, and the little boy, he got like emotional. He was so happy that because they had been trying to get an Andor poster all weekend and had not worked out. This was a Mexican-American family who loves Diego Luna. My household is a Mexican-American household, so I understand what Diego Luna means to this family. So when I hadn't know anything about that beforehand, I found out after the fact. They were so moved by this and so happy that they said, "We're going to frame this and put it on our living room." And they were serious.
Oh man.
And they would not take it for free. The man immediately opened up one of his pin sets and took out the most wonderful little Darth Vader enamel pin that now is on my desk at work. And when I look at that, I still think of that family, and I still think of that magical moment. And I thought about them as Andor was going through its course, and now Andor season 2 is not far off. And I think about that family and how much enjoyment they must be having because of Andor. And I wonder, maybe they still have that poster, if they were serious, putting it in their living room, if not somewhere. And I just think, like, this is the kind of stuff that we get to experience, and it enriches your life. And I'm sure everyone has a handful of these types of stories that have been fortunate enough to have created these connections and go to these kinds of things, whether it's Star Wars Celebration or a local con that you're going to, or whether it's big, medium, or small. You have these types of enriching stories that makes your life happy and gives you a smile when you need to think back on something that makes you smile. So, and without this community, that kind of thing, then I only hope that you're getting it from somewhere else, because everybody needs that kind of stuff.
Exactly. I remember leaving, I was there at Celebration Chicago on the last day, and it was winding down, and I was getting ready to leave, and there was this guy, and he had a really cool, I think he had the Star Wars Marvel, it was a jacket, right? And so had some of the old, Marvel comics art on it. And I kind of stopped, and I was like, as we were kind of going, I was like, "Hey, dude, that's a pretty cool jacket," or something like that. And I'm like, "Hey, do you mind if I, pose for a picture with you?" I'm just like, "That's kind of cool." And we were kind of like getting ready to take a selfie, and then this guy who's dressed as Luke Skywalker, farm boy, came up, and we ended up like getting a picture of the three of us just because but it was something where it's like it didn't last. It was like maybe 5 minutes, and it's not something where we exchange names and things, but it was just a nice, cool connection at the end. And I think a lot of times you'll see that at cons where, cosplayers, right? And I even know, like, doing Matt the Radar Technician, people would, when people came up to you and they're like, "Hey, my kids, can we take a picture together?" And you're just like, and it's just a fun moment, right? It's not something where I'm like, "No, you're not gonna put an 8 by, like a 11 by 17 of us up there." But I'm like, I think what you're saying is right. It's like just these moments and these connections, and it really ties back in, and it really kind of makes your enjoyment just fuller. And then, although I know it'll be, we've got Japan coming up, and then most likely it'll come back to the States. But it really makes it, I think, more important now, because it's like, man, I want to be there because I want to continue those connections of some kind. And then you're starting to look, then you start to look at the convention calendar like I do, and like, all right, there's that one. Anthony King was right down at ICCC and then Nashville, that big toy convention. And last year, I got to go down there, and Ross was there, and Monica, and Frank and Amy were there, and then my family came down for a little bit of it, and it was amazing. And the show was amazing, and we got to kind of hang out, and you had what we called those down times where we often, like, if I see you, like, we're doing something, we're recording and things like that, and then you finish up very nice. Oh, okay, great, it's nice to see you. But it's like when you have those moments in between where you can just kind of like, this is nice, or you're just talking and just comes up. And I think I still go back to that episode you did with your father, right?
Yeah.
And talking about the Kings and all that, and it was just really nice, because I think it was just a great conversation. And I think it's also something when you talk to your boys, we'll be doing here very shortly, as we're going to probably be winding this down in a little bit. I think that's the fun part. And I don't think it really matters sometimes what the topic is.
Yeah.
I think you just say, it's just like, look, we want to hang out. And I think a lot of times, even with David and Aaron, right? The topic, they do a lot of the great topics, but sometimes it's kind of fun just listening to the two of them kind of go. And you, over a time, when you're following a podcast like Reactions or Coffee with Kenobi, or, all of ours, it's, you start to kind of pick up those little things, and like Mary, it's just kind of, you're just following along people's lives, and it's like, so much so that you're like, oh, I wonder what's going on this week with them. And if they're not in your feed, you're like, shoot, what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's because we all want to be, a part of that type of a group. We want to be connected with people. And it's one of the reasons why I enjoy your breakfast series as much as I do, because although you do follow a topic and you have a bit of a structure to it with the questions, it's formatted to bring conversation. And really, what are podcasts? That's it. You have some disembodied voice in your brain right now through these plugs in our ears, and you're listening to a conversation, and it helps your commute, or it helps you get through some noisy coworkers at work or something. Everybody has it or when you're doing your things around the house, making breakfast, doing this, that, the other thing. And I'm so happy to be a part of that larger conversation and to be able to add my voice. And sitting here with you literally is an example of the connections that David and Aaron have made. And we're sitting here hijacking their podcast and doing a great job at what we do, which is rambling.
I think if you came for the ramble, you definitely came for the right place. The other thing that I always find a little envious about the ColbyCast is you can take a multitude of different topics. And I can divert off on occasion, but sometimes when you've gone down through and do your recaps, whether sometimes even multiple ones, I'm like, oh man, it's just not my genre. But I'm like, I'm a little jealous he gets to do it because I have something to say, right? I'm like, I want to talk about that too. But what have been some of the fun things that you guys have been doing as we get through the summer and into the fall? What have you guys been talking about this summer?
I was just thinking about this because you mentioned it. I'm going to get ready to record with my boys here in a little while when they get back from coaching hockey. I don't even remember the last time we did an episode recap, because we will do like episode by episode recaps of things that we all are interested in. And of course, Star Wars always, without fail, hits our radar. We'll always be talking about that. I think the last one that we did was House of the Dragon. That got us that, the Acolyte, House of the Dragon, was pretty much May, June, and July. We did a lot of that. Sometimes though, we need a palate cleanser. The boys are just like, what, we've talked about such and such for 2-3 weeks in a row. Let's go off grid. So the last couple ones, we've just been talking about some of our favorite stuff. We talked about our favorite video games for like an hour. It was because Luke found an old iPod of his, an iPod Touch that he plugged in for like 5 hours. 15-year-old iPod Touch that he got charged and working, and he found a mobile video game that he and I were absolutely obsessed with 15 years ago. So like when he was 10 years old ish, and we were sitting there one Saturday night, and we were just. I got to watch my two 20-something-year-old sons have a real legitimate like nostalgia moment. And I'm like, we got to talk about this. So we did a show about our favorite video games based on this memory lane that they went down. Of course, we love talking about movies. We did Beetlejuice. We did Deadpool, Wolverine. You mentioned, I talked to my dad. That was a couple summers ago. I love my dad so much, and he is such a funny and witty and conversational kind of person. I'm like, I don't know if anyone's going to listen to this, but I'm going to get it on recording, and I'm going to put it out there for anyone who wants to enjoy. And really, that's sort of the thesis of the ColbyCast, is that I get to talk to my kids week after week and put it out there for people to enjoy or not. It's up to them, but it's something that I have now spent 2+ years, actually coming up on 3, and
wow.
Early next year, where we've gotten to put out 180-ish episodes of us talking. And from a father's perspective, that's gold. Like I win. So yeah, we'll be talking about the Penguin coming up on our next episode.
My son was watching that earlier. He really likes that.
Oh, it's not to give away any spoilers, but I really like it. It's really good. So yeah, if you're into DC and the Batman stuff, especially from that movie that came out a couple years ago with Robert Pattinson, it's a great continuation of it. So we'll be doing an episode, a recording about that soon. And again, I just like to put it out there and include people and hear people's feedback and just be a part of this larger conversation. It's just so rewarding and fun.
It's funny that my wife and I have been rewatching Game of Thrones, and we're into season 4, and it's funny because Greg and I were talking about The Acolyte, and I even think when we were doing, what was it? Oh yeah, because I was doing, I was on reaction. It's like I never left. We were talking about Rebels 10 years later, and one of the things is like getting through that first season of Rebels was a little, like that's when I kind of came in. It got a little tough, but I'm like, we're into season 4 of Game of Thrones, and we know how it ended. It ended more of a whimper than a bang. But I mean, like, it's so good. And I'm like, wow, when a series gets its stride, and I would say that as bad as Lost ended, if you're there for like season 2, 3, and 4 of Lost, it's amazing. And I would think you could probably rattle off a half dozen or more shows where, once you got past kind of the first, where it's like, it had its footing, some of these series, and that's kind of the shame about, something like The Acolyte, whereas something like, even with Bad Batch, right? Resistance barely got out of a season, out of season 1 into season 2. And I think they lost a season 3 that would have been kind of interesting, even though, arguably some of that first one, you're like, where are they going with this? But I think sometimes these things where you need some time. And I would even say that the Mandalorian season 1 was so rare that it really just, it was a home run right out the gate. It really set a tone and went. But even as it tried, it almost went in reverse, where by season 3, it's kind of trying to find its footing, or it's trying to do something else. And people go, no, we kind of like that. But, not every show gets lucky enough to really hook you from the beginning. Sometimes it takes a little time. And I think probably that's kind of the fun thing when you guys are doing, when you're kind of going your beat to beat, that you probably find with them. Or as you'll find with Andor season 2.
What's funny is that when I was contemplating doing the podcast, I just know myself, and I don't have the attention span to talk about one thing. So I'm just like, I can't tell you. I really, in all honesty, trying to be very earnest, anyone like yourself, like David and Aaron, anyone that has a Star Wars podcast and does Star Wars talk week by week by week, I really admire, because that is a skill. It is not easy. There are downtimes, there are slow times. And for the people that started Star Wars podcasts when there weren't even any movies coming out, or content, I should say, not just movies, but any content. it takes a level of energy that I just realistically didn't think that I had. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to steal other people's ideas and talk about everything. Because it does give me that opportunity to go off, on some tangent about, like last week we just did, what if you had 3 hours on hand, what would you watch, Interstellar or Dune 2? And then I made my kids argue about which movie was better. And one took one side and one took the other, and I did what I always do, which was just I play France, and I'm just like, yeah, I'll just cut it right down the middle. It's a fun dynamic, but yeah, I really do really appreciate, because I mean, so many people, so many of you are out there doing Star Wars podcasts that help scratch my Star Wars itch, without the responsibility of me having to find, okay, well, what are we going to talk about Star Wars this week?
Well, and in some cases, and we've talked about this before, where the series and the has kind of changed, I think, podcasters, in that you feel like you do need to kind of do the week by week beats and the recaps and the previews and the trailers, and then it's kind of odd when you have that downtime in between where you're like, well, what are we going to talk about now? I liked David and Aaron doing, like, they went back and did like a vintage reaction where they did I think it was the droids of the Ewok cartoons, and they'll be doing a little bit more of that. And and then Aaron he'll do like the news, right? He'll do like one where he does like more solo. And I think it kind of it's a nice kind of way to kind of branch out, because, let's say they, Disney Plus kind of slows down a little bit. Then everybody's like, all right, what do we do now? Like, oh gosh, what are those poor YouTubers do that are like, oh, this week and Star Wars goes to hell, and you're just like, all right, where do they get those laser eyes? That's what I want to know. That's a filter I don't have in my laptop. I got a lot of things in my laptop, but the laser eyes I don't have. And I'm like, you know what? I'm really not going to spend a minute, half hour in Photoshop making them. I'm like, that's not me. Too much other stuff to do. But
well, we are going to be getting into some pretty good Star Wars content here. Only a few weeks away with Skeleton Crew coming up, and then I know Andor season 2, I don't think has an actual release date, but people are talking about 2025, right? And then we get into Celebration, which will be early spring, right, of next year, and I have to imagine that we're going to have some movie news that will be coming with Celebration, because we know that Mandalorian and Grogu film is being filmed as we speak, if not wrapping up. I don't know what the time frame is, but I know it was being filmed recently. I think it was D23 they talked about having already started filming that.
Wow.
So yeah, we're gonna have some Star Wars stuff to talk about here in 2025, and that's great for me, because I like to joke and say that the ColbyCast is a Star Wars podcast masquerading as a pop culture podcast. So when Star Wars is there to talk about, like, we are always all over it, but then when it's a little slower, then we have that flexibility of talking about whatever else might be interesting to us. So I get the best of both worlds. What can I say?
I know. And then we get to rotate, Greg and Jen and Ross and Mary and Frank and all those folks, and and Anthony and Dan and all them, Tom, so everybody takes a guest, and you just rotate one podcast to the left, and you go, okay, it's your turn to, and like, Craig's like, how many podcasts is he on this week? And everybody's like, all right, what show are you doing? Hey, what show are you doing? But that's kind of fun, because like I said, as these connections, right, we're kind of wrapping things up, as these connections kind of grow, it's fun because everybody can kind of help everybody out. And whether we're talking about like, hey, well, let's go on, Long Take and talk about Dune, or let's go on ColbyCast and talk about music videos, or let's go on, Teachers in the Dungeon, and we're going to talk about games, or talk about your favorite album on Album Cockpit, or we're just going to go on reactions, and kind of listen to the dad joke of the week, which, oh my gosh, I better find that. Stall for me for a second here. I'm missing the most important part of this, but the psychology quarter.
I sometimes wish that I could contribute to that kind of, that's such a what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a nice warm blanket when you hear Aaron tell his dad joke of the week, or David do the psychology corner, or Jen goes into an academic explanation of something that I could never ponder in my life, or Dr. Cass does the very good job at doing the similar things. I don't have something like that to contribute. We just blather on about silly things, but that kind of thing is so valuable because you get to see the individuality of the people that are putting this together, because those are things from their lives, right? Jen comes from an academic, she's an academic, right? Dr. Cass as well. And David is his profession is, in that field where he does his corner, and Aaron is a dad, right? I mean, so he's got the corner on the dad jokes.
All right. As we kind of wrap things up, I think I found this. I got this off the internet, so there you go. There's your source. So are
What's
you ready?
that? What is this?
I got a Star Wars dad joke, man. I got it.
What is it? No. What is the internet? I'm trying to understand.
I don't know what the internet is. Everything you read is true, right? All right. Oh, this is an easy one. All right, let's do this. What is the most popular Star Wars movie in Italy?
I do not know.
The Phantom Venice. Now that was either a tie between that one or this one. So I'll make up for the hour that we've taken from folks. All right, see if this one works any better. What do you call an invisible droid?
What?
C-3PO. See this?
I have to tell you that I genuinely love dad jokes, and every time I laugh at one, it is genuine. It is always a genuine laugh.
I'm throwing my phone away no more. At any rate, so we're going to wrap things up because I know you got to do a ColbyCast. And speaking
of
which,
no, but I have one for you.
Oh, you have one for me? All right, lay it on me.
Because if you get to do two, then I get to do one.
Fair enough.
Did you know that dogs can't do MRIs, but CAT scan?
Oh. See, I can hear the animals in the background just going, oh, man.
The howling in the background.
See, people, you think this stuff is easy. It's not. It's a two. You've got to find one, and then you've got to experience it. You've got to take it all in. At any rate, all right. As you're recording your next episode, where can people find the ColbyCast?
Yes, on the threads, on the Instagram, on the X, and actually I'm putting the episodes onto YouTube. You can't see our happy smiley faces recording, but you can hear our happy smiley voices speaking, but while looking at a very lovely crafted background that I made on the YouTube. So if you want to listen to us also on any podcatcher that's out there, we're on all of them. So hope you enjoy yourself. We'd love to have you along, and then reach out to me on any of those social media channels and bring in that connection that we've been talking about. And Greg, again, thank you so much for including me on this, and David and Aaron, and to all those in the Florida area or in other areas that may be affected. Prayers, thoughts, and hopes out to all of you.
I couldn't have said any better myself, and this show will be much better when they get back to it. But if you can also find Star Wars Reactions at Instagram on SW Reactions, and I think on X, I believe it is SW Reactions Pod. I will confirm that. SW Reactions. Yes, SW Reactions Pod, and I think they're also on Blue Sky. If you look for Star Wars Reactions, you will find them as well, I think. And then look into the last episode. I know that they have a speak pipe. I think it's speedpipe.com/reactions, where someone can leave a voicemail for them if they have a reaction for a particular show or something like that. However, and of course you can find me at Rebel Base Card on all the socials there. But we're going to cross our fingers. We're going to hope that everybody is going to be okay. Make some connections out there. Help somebody else. I know I love Aaron's be nice to somebody, and I would just say, look, help your neighbor out. Definitely check on somebody, especially if you're in the storm areas. After you've kind of determined everything, you're okay, family's okay, check up on a neighbor, that person down the street, maybe that one who really can't, needs a little help, things like that. Help everybody out, because when you're on the ground level, you have the most good. And then let's hope that all the other mechanisms in place can kind of put things back together, because this storm's going to make a mess, and we just hope that everybody gets back together and back to it, because we've got more Star Wars to come. But anyway, All right. Colby, once again, thank you very much for helping me fill in for David and Aaron, and we will return it back to your rightful Star Wars Reactions podcast, because it is elegant discussions for a more civilized age.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or by Lucasfilm Limited. It's intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars. All names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and the respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Star Wars Reactions, unless otherwise indicated. Star Wars Reactions. Elegant discussion for a more civilized age.